Good evening. Welcome to this study session of the Albion City Council, December 18th, 2017. We'll start off with a roll call.
Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Brown. Lawler.
Here.
Spicer.
Here.
French.
Here.
And Mayor Brown.
Here. I'll make note of this at the meeting as well, that Councilmember Brown is under the weather, so she won't be here this evening, so she told me that. Okay. The purpose of this study session is to provide guidance to the attorney relative to the medical marijuana licensing ordinance. So, do you want to kick it off? Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, sorry. Are there any public comments this evening? Those addressing the council limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes. We ask that you observe proper decorum and state your name and address. Is there any public comment on the study session agenda this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we will move forward to the item for individual discussion.
So, what you have in your study session packet is a page 2 after the, or actually the first page after your agenda. It's kind of a worksheet outlining the things that we have to address tonight. And I'll just briefly go through them, just so you have an overview. Outdoor facilities, meaning whether or not there are, like for example, marijuana plants being grown that are in the outdoor in the public, in a fenced area. Grower facilities, which is obvious, but to remind you, Class A is up to 500 plants, Class B is up to 1,000 plants, Class C is up to 1,500 plants. And then we also have the other facilities listed there. Stacked licenses, basically what that means is, and this is something that's permitted under the state, but it's up to local municipalities whether or not they want to do it, is allowing multiple facilities to operate under the same roof. They'd be separated under the same roof, but under the same roof. So you have a giant facility, for example, a Class C grow operation, and then through a locked door, you have quite separate a processor facility, something like that. Whether or not the city wants to do automatic renewals, I can address that a little bit further when we get to it. It's just automatic renewals of the annual license. Whether or not, as part of the ordinance, we want to mandate that the exterior of the buildings and the facilities be lit to aid in public safety efforts to not only protect the property of the business owners, but to more easily patrol those areas to ensure that there isn't crime going on related to the facilities, because we are talking about having large amounts of marijuana and large amounts of cash present in those locations. And then second to last, distances, and what distances you want to establish from parks, whether or not you want to do it from places of worship, if you want to put distance between the various licensed facilities. We have to set an application fee to do the investigation portion of those people applying, and then the annual license fee. Now, the statute allows up to $5,000, and I had mentioned before when we started this is something that we actually went over with licensing and regulatory affairs at when the director of planning, John Tracy, and I attended a seminar on this. I think it was in February. While the maximum is $5,000, we have to be able to rationalize that. We can't just arbitrarily say it's going to be $5,000. To my knowledge, and the manager can probably speak to this, I believe there's actually some litigation going on where some businesses have challenged municipalities saying that they can't justify $5,000 because they couldn't rationalize where they were spending it. So when we set a license amount, we have to be able to legitimately rationalize it. I think a lot of municipalities are going to have a problem of, they just arbitrarily say, well, we're going to charge the maximum, but really don't have any way to back it up. So that's what we need to go over tonight in the next 55 minutes.
Okay. So, I know. Okay, so I know, for drafting purposes, what's the easiest thing for you, that you need for us, I guess, in order of least
Okay.
difficult to?
Well, I
More
mean,
complex.
some of these, I mean, I think some of them are fairly simple, and we could probably get those out of the way right away.
Okay.
Whether or not the city wants to allow outdoor facilities, I can tell you my recommendation to the city would be no, for a couple of reasons. One, it's been my experience, in other jurisdictions that, regardless of how well secured these facilities are, when you have grow operations outside, you're inherently making them a target for activity. And the other problem is, and something else we've experienced is, I mean, as much as you regulate it, what tends to happen is when these large grow operations are outside, and for example, I've seen a couple where they use very impressive chain link fences to secure the area, and nobody can get in, but inevitably the plants grow to the point where they're actually going through the fence, and people just go up and take them around. So my recommendation to the city would be to not allow that, because I've seen it cause more problems than it'd be a benefit to the business, so.
So now we're in work session, but I would agree. I just think it needs to be, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's,
Mr. Tracy?
I say the other item along with that. A third part of that would be I'd be concerned with is any soil erosion or runoff from those areas that had marijuana plants out there, so not knowing exactly what they may use in pesticides or other, so.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go with that.
Okay. Probably the next easiest one would be stacked licenses, whether or not you wanna allow, for example, growing and processing facilities under the same roof. And if so, how many? Quite frankly, I mean, as you know, given that the businesses are subject to inspection, I don't foresee any problems as long as the individual facilities are locked and separated from each other, them being under the same general roof. Now, that being said,
They have to be under, different ownership, correct? They don't?
okay, so like, for example, with a grower license, if you're a grower, you cannot have an interest in a secure transporter facility or a safety compliance facility.
Okay,
You can, however, have an interest in a processor facility.
okay,
So what I envision with the facilities that set up in a stack scenario is you have a large warehouse divided down the middle, or divided in 2/3 and a third, and in the 2/3 you got the grow operation, and the 1/3 you got a processing facility, and there's a locked, secured doors between the two, so that there's no immediate interaction between the two. So I don't have a problem with that. I can't see, I mean, I'm sure there's a negative to it, I'm sure there's a positive to it, but I can't see anything that's jumping out at me that would cause me to caution the city about it.
oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Lawler and then Councilman Spicer.
Thank you, Mayor. With the locked facility, can it stay locked at all times?
It has to stay locked at all the facilities have to be secure. I guess, yeah, yes, is a short answer to your question.
Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you. So, if I'm a grower and I have built this facility and, I would have the option to allow processing or not. guess, because or are we just saying we will allow that and not necessarily requiring it one way?
We're not requiring it,
Leaving the
but
option open to the grower?
right, you're saying they could hypothetically apply for a second license and have the two businesses under the same roof, but divided with a locked, secure division between the two operations.
So, oops.
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
So then, I understand if you are a grower and you can also have a license for processing, but can a grower build a facility, allow processing and then charge a fee for that? Am I misunderstanding? Charge the process, if they're not wanting to process themselves, can they have a processing, individual in their plant and charge them for processing fees or for usage, I guess?
So let me just make sure I understand. So you're asking, can somebody have a grow operation and then have separately a processor operation on there and charge them, say, rent?
Yeah, absolutely. They can,
Yeah, I guess hypothetically.
okay.
We don't regulate that.
All we'd be regulating is whether or not they can be under the same roof.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
If I could ask one question in regards to that, Colin, you're making reference to a horizontal sharing of space. Can they technically have upstairs and downstairs?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just envisioned like a warehouse type scenario, but I guess hypothetically you could have upstairs, downstairs, as long as the two don't have immediate access to each other.
So this is just a curious question based on what she was saying. So let's say you do have a landlord who has owns a place out there and it's like split. So it's like two, in the previous, there's been like two industrial things. And let's say they want to rent or whatever to, I don't know, a grower or processor. But on the other hand, they want to do some other industrial thing on the other side. Is that what happens there?
I think it's fine. The only thing we'd be determining whether or not we allow is to have more than one under one roof.
Okay.
I mean, you can always have one, some other.
Or I'm saying a business of a different nature.
Sure,
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. So you need a decision on that.
So, yeah, I don't have a problem with stacked licenses, and I think the number, I guess at present, I would say my recommendation would be not to limit that. I think it'll be sufficient when we talk about the limits of the various facilities. If it becomes a problem, we can always circle back to that, but I don't have a problem. And I guess I would recommend that the council go along with allowing stacked licenses and not place a limit on that.
Councilmember French.
Thank you. If we don't limit anything, but let the market play out, we only have 5 or 6, 7 properties that are even available for them to develop, given the foot regulations that we have just for parks. Thinking that being unlimited, we will be limited by acreage rather than limited by number of permits, correct?
You might be, but I mean, I think that the distances and the number of facilities, I mean, it's probably a separate discussion, but I'm just talking about limiting the ability. Once you come back and you decide how many facilities you're gonna allow in the city, I don't think you need to limit the number that you're gonna allow to stack.
Right, and what I'm saying simply is that I don't think we need to limit anything. Let the people who wanna grow come, the ones who wanna process come, and then, because there's only 7 parcels to allow, unless we're now allowing, is our EDC allowing multiple companies on the same parcel?
So I have something to say about the limiting of facilities, but again, that's a longer discussion.
Well, we need a conversation about it, right?
Well, I think right now we're just discussing whether or
Just the
not,
stacking.
Okay.
yeah, and I'm not opposed to that. Is there, Councilmember Reed?
Because we talk so much about a thing, and because it's been a while, can you refresh me, please, on how much of this we agreed to do? Or is this just a discussion on, if you do it, this is what you can do?
I think so. I mean, we've authorized, what, 4 of the
You
5?
authorized 4 of the facilities, we did not, the only facility we did not authorize was dispensaries.
Okay.
So we're just, yeah.
And then we basically placed, I think everything, all 4 can go in the industrial areas, and then the B3 is,
Everything except for grows, I think.
yeah.
Okay, so is the general consensus we're okay with stacking?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so, next is automatic renewals. I guess I would say, as a general concept, to the best of my knowledge, we don't have any other licenses in the city that are automatic renewals. So I guess one point I would make is, I don't think we should necessarily deviate from that, because, you know, I think for sake of consistency. The other reason I don't like automatic renewals, is this is a particular type of license that's gonna require annual investigation, annual checks, and I think with an automatic renewal, some of that can fall by the wayside. And I think that this is, something that should be examined on an annual basis by the planning department, by public safety, by my office, by the manager's office. So my recommendation to council would be not to do the automatic renewal. I know, it's once a year that these licenses come up. But by the time that they come to council, most of the legwork will be done between public safety and my office and planning and the manager's office if it comes up. So I'm not a fan of automatic renewals, period, but that's just my 2 cents.
I'm fine with not having automatic renewal.
Don't
Councilmember
we
French.
Sorry, we renew the games in Cascarelli's and other places every year, right?
Right, but they come to you for a vote.
Right, that's what I mean, so I'm saying I'm fine with that, I just, I'm thinking a couple of steps ahead, sorry, but as we think about, the license fee amount, are we responsible for all that stuff you just talked about, the investigations, et
Yes.
cetera?
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
So how much we charge is a function of how long that would take.
I think you have to do,
The number of hours that.
I think we have to do the
No idea if we
inspection,
haven't done one yet.
we probably have to do the inspection anyway,
Right.
whether it's automatic or not.
Right, I'm just trying to figure out staff time, I'm sorry, I'm.
So, are there any objections to, or is there anyone in support of automatic renewals? Okay,
I just think either way.
Councilmember
there's gonna be a
Spicer.
check, I'm sorry.
yeah.
There's gonna be a check, either if it's automatic, someone's gonna say, okay, the automatic's coming up, we have to go out and check and do this and this and this, whereas if they're renewal, we have to go out and do this and this and this, so I'm fine either way.
No automatic renewal. Or, Councilman Barnes.
I think you've opened the door for me, basically because my position, based on the research of medical marijuana across the nation, right now, Michigan voted to allow medical marijuana. And the body of this council voted not to have dispensaries. And in order to obtain that medical marijuana, people have to go to the dispensaries, or to their caregivers to make that purchase. And in this body, I'm just really dumbfounded as why we're involved in all, based on the financial aspect of this, and the citizens are going to the polls to vote on recreational marijuana. I understand, can I finish, please?
I'm just saying a point of order, is that on topic to?
Yes, always on topic to this, based
Okay.
on what we're talking about, this study session is about, the study session. No decisions will be made, discussion and recommendations can be made in the study session. I would like to finish my comment, please. And my total comment is, we're talking about using resources from the city. We're talking about the lawyer, planning, the code, APS, and that's called staff time, to monitor this if they do not follow procedure for what? Renewals, automatic, or non-renewals. We still would have to use city resources to check and make sure they're following. My biggest point is, what financial gain do we have in this situation at all, period?
I think the explanation of that would be the fees.
Well, you get the license fees, you get, there's taxes that end up coming each year from the respective businesses. I mean, there's a state sharing portion that could potentially come to the city. I mean, there's a lot of different,
Let's talk about the ratio of what we would make if we were dispensing to our medical marijuana patients who are in the city of Albion, who will have to travel to other cities to purchase their medical marijuana, which if we provided here in the city of Albion and we had dispensaries, we'd have a much larger share of that financial success.
I guess my question, we're not getting, well, maybe theoretically, but the sales tax, we're not getting.
well, the share is determined by the number of facilities that you license, so, I mean, really,
Yeah.
you've authorized 4 out of 5, so the amount that you would gain is negligible. I mean, you've got the other 4 facilities, so hypothetically, you could have 5 people, 5 growers come in and set up grow operations and have, I mean, if you had authorized, say, dispensaries, and you have 1 dispensary, I mean, what you're gonna get in terms of profit sharing for the grow operations is far gonna outweigh what you get for the dispensary. Cause it's based on per license, not, the individual. But, so, renewals?
Councilmember Spicer?
Well, I was just going to say, being that we are financial managers for the city, I think that for me, I would like to, I would prefer to err on the side of caution. Even if I were to ask some baby steps, and because we haven't experienced this before, this is new. I mean, and we're certainly trying to cover all of our bases, but that's probably not gonna happen. We're gonna learn most from experience, and we haven't experienced it yet. We have yet to experience it. So I think that, in going through this process, I'm not persuaded one way or the other with regard to these decisions. I think as we go through, things will become clear, and as time goes on, they'll be even more obvious what we're dealing with. So I'm all for discussing.
So I think, I don't see anyone supporting
Okay,
automatic.
Automatic renewals, I would say, no.
okay.
Yeah.
The next one should be an easy one, lights around the exterior. I see nothing but positives from that. I think it's gonna aid public safety and being able to patrol the businesses. I think it's a kind of a timeless thing where there's bright lights, usually there's not a whole lot of crime because.
Do we have to specify wattage or how many relative to the size of the building?
I think we can, hypothetically, we could put that in. I honestly haven't given that any thought. To a certain extent, I think we could say, the building needs to be well lit from the exterior and, 360.
Should the details be in the zoning ordinance?
Okay.
I would think so.
We can leave go ahead, sorry.
Yeah.
Simple answer, short.
Yeah, so what we would put in ours is that, the exterior of the building needs to be, well illuminated and comply with the city's zoning requirements for exterior illumination of these facilities, something like that. Okay. So.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, now we get into the tougher ones. So, I guess we'll start with distances, whether or not you want to include a distance limitation from parks.
So, Councilmember French.
So we haven't talked about fences, but that's in there, right? That will be the expectation. If we have, I didn't know it was being taped.
Yes, it's being.
Oh, okay. If these facilities are fenced, and they're indoors, I'm wondering about the necessity of distance from a park. So I would say that if we're gonna have a distance, 500 should be at the very most the maximum.
Okay, how,
Let me
Councilman-
just point out,
how much,
Wait,
how
One
much
second.
odor,
Councilmember Reed, Councilmember Spicer.
how much odor is going to be coming from this facility?
They're required to be
And-
kept under negative pressure, which hypothetically, there shouldn't be any, because the air will only flow in, it won't flow out.
Well, it will be flowing out, but it'll be
It
flowing out
flows
filtered.
in but will not flow
Right,
out.
it's a negative pressure, so like, when somebody opens the door so that the air flows in. So you shouldn't have that skunky, weed odor going through the neighborhood.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna do a what if? What if one day something should go wrong and odors get out?
John will be on it.
Well,
Come on, John.
Just kidding.
yeah.
The way most of this is written to begin with, there's a responsibility of the growers and such to meet a minimum requirement, and that is one of the requirements that is required for them to have a filtering system to where you have no odor on the outside. If that were to occur, then that would need to be addressed immediately by the building department. And to the point really, if need be, you could put them at a stop of any other type of use in there or anything that they're doing at the time until they're fixed. I know there's plants in there and it may smell some, but I think it's one of those items that you could pretty much keep under control without a problem, being that it's a necessity to begin with.
Is there a certain length of how tall the fence has to be?
Colin, do you have anything on the fence height?
I don't think we have
I don't think
a
it's
fence
fence.
in our ordinance, it has,
Well,
the way it's.
As long as
it
it's-
has to be contained in an enclosed locked facility, but I don't
Right.
think we have,
That would only be if you're exterior growing outside.
and since we're not doing that, I don't know that we would have a fence.
I mean, I
That
would
would
think
be up
that,
to council.
I would think that if whoever has the facility under their discretion, they could say, I want to fence off my, my plot. But everything to secure the marijuana is going to have to be inside the building anyways. So the building's going to be the secure
Correct.
facility.
Mayor, if I might, I did ask John Tracy to provide you with some maps that indicate the distances from parks and churches, and I don't know if there's any other facilities, daycare, or schools.
Which one?
There's a few of them here. Lauren had run off the larger map there with the buffer around both the M1, M2P, I shouldn't say M1, M1P, M2P, and M2. That's the areas that would be allowed to have growing operations or facilities in them. And if you look at the first page on top, or of the drawings there, this is a copy of what's up here on this. And what I'll do is I'll let Lauren go over some of these if you want. And then I'll go over the next two maps after that.
Yeah, so just quickly, so around the different zoning that John mentioned, I created two buffers. The green line is a 500-foot buffer, and the blue line is a 1,000-foot buffer. And then I added in some different places in town that you might want to have a buffer around. So places of worship, schools, childcare facilities, adult foster care facilities, and parks. And so you can see kind of them dotted around. You might notice for B3, there's actually two schools around near the 500-foot buffer, but for the other areas, it looks like it's mostly churches and parks. So if you have other questions about the map, I can answer.
To maybe help out with this a little bit more too, you have two more maps. The one of the industrial park if you take a look at it. And in this map here, you'll see you have the buffer, the 500 and a 1,000-foot buffer around there. But if you look down at McAuliffe Park there, that's on the corner of Austin and North Albion Street, there's a distance going out from that, actually from the park. So you have 500 feet out from that park and 1,000 feet out. And then if you go down to McClure Park, which is the Riverside Park, you'll see where it's designated with the P down there by the water. You have 500 feet going to the north from that park and 1,000 feet. So you pretty much eliminate with 1,000 foot anything that would go in the M2 portion of that.
So one question, I guess, is for you or Cullen. What type of entity are we required to have? A certain, okay. None, okay. And so because of that, we can set the boundary as low 100 feet if we wanted to.
Correct, there's no, for example, with growers, there's no requirement in the state statute to have a certain distance. Now, I don't have the administrative rules in front of me, but most of the primary requirements are in the statute.
Because my concern is that, I'm thinking that, what's that, there's like the River Walk kind of park there, there's Harris Field, there's Holland Park, and there's McAuliffe, and they take out a big chunk
Right.
of property.
The McClure Park takes out the majority off of that.
McClure, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's one on the river.
Councilman Spicer, it's
It's on the river.
It's on the south side of Brownswood that runs back into
Oh, gotcha, okay.
the wastewater treatment.
I didn't realize that was McClure. Thank you.
And if I may, while I'm up here too, if you look at the last map, it's actually the B3 zoned area. You'll notice the red dashes around there, that is the B3 area. The yellow lines out around that curve in and out, you have the two schools, and if you have 1,000 feet from the school, what happens there, basically you've eliminated any B3 east of Eaton Street to begin with. Then the amount of B3 that you would have for use of any type of secure, as far as whoever would be transporting, if they had a business, or processing or safety, it would limit them to basically the farthest north area of that B3. So you've eliminated pretty much all B3 except for part of 28 acres that's up there right now, and a little bit of the mall, strip mall.
Maybe 100 feet.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean-
I bet if you did 1,000, you'd have all of Beaver Street available.
If you did what?
If you made 500 feet instead of 1,000, Beamer Street becomes available.
I think it's just.
You would pretty much,
But also because there's no, I guess, set rule for this, we can have, is it possible to have different distances based on entities? So that's what I'm trying to say. To me, it seems we should say, 100 feet or something, because it really, Councilmember French, it really eats into the industrial zoning.
Right.
areas.
Thank you. I would say that I would rather that we keep the limits big, but not necessarily 1,000 feet for schools, because we got kids there and lots of them 8 months out of the year. And parks, we don't have that kind of concentration of young people for that period of time. And so I would be much more willing to make a limit smaller for parks and bigger for schools.
I just go the opposite because,
Oh, Councilmember Reed.
because parks kids are gonna be outside, school, they're gonna be inside.
Yeah,
Because there's,
that's true.
The playgrounds
Yeah,
at the only school with a playground for outside is Harrington, which is way out there. If you do a city park, everything is outside. They have no inside to go to.
Councilmember Barnes.
In your projections of these distances, I heard in the street Beamer, does that include knowing that a church has purchased that large lot of land on Beamer Street at Cooper Street, major parts of it all the way behind the strip
Tram.
mall?
I didn't know that.
Okay, I just want to make you aware of that.
They were talking about it, but I didn't know it's actually possible.
I guess my concern is just, because we're limited for land anyways, we probably want to have something, but then, because I just look at the 500 right there from McCullough and then McClure, and that, those are big chunks. Councilman Barnes,
I never got an answer. Did anyone,
say it again now.
you're making projections on this footage concerning schools and churches, and you mentioned Beamer Street. Has anyone recognized that they did actually purchase that property? I didn't want to mention the name of the pastor or the church, but I was informed by the member cutting the grass that they had purchased it and they planned to build a church. So I just want you to, recognize that.
Purchase what property?
All the way from behind the strip mall on Beamer, all the way down to Cooper and Father Pass. There was
where
a church there.
Where George Burton's church used to be?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Mayor, if I could offer a comment? One thing for the council to consider is that we are talking about facilities other than a dispensary. So these will essentially look like factories. It's not, and they're not going to have street traffic. It'll all be business-related traffic. So the impact on parks and schools, I would offer, will probably be nominal. It's more an appearance relative to the situation as opposed to real impact. So I don't know if it makes sense to look at distance because you're so already defining the area based on the district itself, whether it's the M's or the B district. And if there is a concern relative to proximity to parks and schools, Colin, would it make sense under those circumstances to ask for fencing if they're within blank feet of certain types of facilities that they also have exterior fencing?
I mean, I think it makes sense, yeah. I mean, I think the council needs to decide whether or not you want, I mean, like I said, and I was just flipping through the emergency rules from Laura, and I don't see any distance regulations in there either, but.
Yeah, the thing that concerns me is just and I'm going blank, but the street that the wastewater treatment plant's on, that's the same street that like the old, probably shipping place was for the steel company and everything. That's so close. I
Close
do.
to the park, you mean, or close to the water?
Well, close to the park. I mean, it's like literally, it's right across the river.
Right, but if you look at the 500, sorry.
Oh, Councilmember French.
If you look at the map, the railroad tracks were most of the southern border of the Harvard Industries plant. Right, you can see that's, except for the very beginning of Albion Street, there's a tiny little triangle that's inside that 500 foot, but the rest of it is that railroad track line, that's the southern edge of Harvard Industries. And so, if you kept it 500 feet from McClure Park, that opens up a large swath. Even if you have 500 feet from McAuliffe, you still have this big swath. You could even have them enter Albion Street, carve out a street north of a railroad. Well, they probably could ship to Colorado if they wanted to on the train.
The railroad track would be about the 500. It would be within,
Less.
less, I mean, if you're at 500, you'd probably eliminate anything between Brown and railroad tracks, but after railroad tracks, it'd open it up quite a bit.
See that stuff. I would, so you need an answer.
What's that?
You need an answer.
I'd like an answer,
I,
because we have a lot to go over in the next 20 minutes
Yeah,
that
no.
we're probably not gonna be able to get to tonight.
yeah, well, I would be comfortable, based on agreeing with the manager, the way the facilities are gonna be set up, they're gonna be discreet. And then if, you know, if it's too close to something, we could say maybe have a certain limit for fencing. But I would be comfortable just because of the amount of land we're dealing with, you know, 250, 100. Would there be any objection to, well, we should kind of do it that. Would anybody object to
250 feet?
250? Would anybody?
Let's say 300, 100 yards. A football field.
Not from a park.
Well, yeah.
What would you do?
Because really what's happening, it's almost like if you go in the industrial park, it's just like a big warehouse. And I guess residents would have to know what was going on there.
Well, none of the businesses under the administrative rules and under the statute, they can't have,
Signage.
you know, well, I mean, I think they can have signage, they just can't advertise what they're doing. I mean, you're not gonna see, you know, a big
Neon.
leaf that says
Yeah.
marijuana being grown here. So, and then that's intentionally so, because, like I said, you know, and regardless of how many times the business is tell you otherwise, I think the specific reason that the state put that in place is because these businesses are targets for violent crime, and so they wanna avoid that.
And if I recall, I think McCullough Park actually has a fence, right? Around it? Councilmember Spicer.
I was just going to say, a comment, I could, either way, 250 or 300 be okay.
I'd just say 250 just to kind of,
So, okay, next one.
Okay. Places of worship?
let's see.
Go 250, I think that solves the problem.
No, it wouldn't solve the problem for like the Orthodox Church.
I still,
I guess the thing for me is just because they're so well, I'll say it this way. To get, if the facilities are in the industrial park area, you have to go in those streets. I mean, you can walk through some fields, but you're gonna have to go on those streets to go back there. So it's, you know what I'm saying? It's not like that you're having traffic that's passing the park, pass by the industrial park.
Okay. Are we back in parks, or are we on places of worship?
We're on places of worship, but I'm just saying, I mean,
I mean, I guess,
I mean, that's kind of why, I mean, I don't know if it's on the, we don't have it on the map, but that's why I was kind of really just saying,
No limits.
huh?
No limits.
I'm indifferent, I just need a yay or a nay and a distance if you want it, so.
Because I'd rather have to say no limits but fencing.
So what area are we talking?
Sure.
Churches.
No, but is there a certain,
What they're,
I would agree with that.
Yeah, because is there, so,
so you're saying if they, say for example, are within 250 feet of a place of worship, they need to have a fence?
or just say anything, we just set a limit, you know, and say, okay, you have a fence if you're,
If you're what?
if you're near a church or
Yeah,
park or,
but near is an ambiguous term, we have to define that for them. What is near? Is near 100 feet, is it 200 feet? We have to.
I'd say if you're within 250 feet of any of these entities, a church, a school, a park, you just have a fence. Would you object to that? I'm not seeing any objection.
So what you're saying is they can hypothetically be
Across the street.
10 feet away as long as they have a facility, or as long as they have a fence.
Yeah, yes.
In this particular case, the only issue is across the street. There are no churches on the south side of Austin Ave.
Yeah.
So, across 4 lanes of traffic, there's a fenced facilities, that'd be okay.
Yeah, and then we could have a discussion about, is it like a,
Chain link.
chain link or solid, and
Yeah.
I think that could really be,
Yep.
that solves the problem.
Okay. Other facilities?
No limit.
Okay.
Was there any other, anyone on council have any concerns about, because with other facilities, we what, a child care, adult foster care,
No, I mean,
or what are you talking about?
distances between grow facility and processing facility.
Well, probably no, because if we've approved both in the same building,
Well, that's only for,
Stack.
stacking is only for, certain combinations. I believe it's,
Growing and processing.
well, it's growing, processing, dispensaries. We don't have dispensaries, so just growing and processing.
okay. Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. So what did we decide for the places of worship?
So basically, I think in general, we just, what I was recommending, and I was asking if there was any objection, would be to say, if you're within 250 feet of any of these things, let's say, so, church or school or park, then you have to have a fence. But it wouldn't say you couldn't have a facility. Because what ends up happening is where is that map? It starts to eat away at maybe like a third or more of the industrial, what is that, M2? M2 and then part of M1P.
Okay. So, then you've got your license fee and your application fee. Quite frankly, I don't know what kind of time commitment is gonna be involved in the application portion of these, because there's a pretty in-depth evaluation by the planning department, my office, finance department. Basically, they gotta get screened, right, each every department in the city to make sure that they're in compliance.
Would that include training for staff to be able to do?
I think, but keep in mind, training is something that we're only gonna need to hypothetically do once.
Okay.
And so an application fee, and I'll say this, the application fee, we have a little bit more time with, because we're gonna have to have 2 readings of the ordinance, and then 30 days before it comes effective. The application fee will set by resolution. Same thing with the license fee. So I can come back to those.
Okay. Councilmember Barnes?
This is where I have the greatest concern. And I'm on 22-203, license, allocation, and annual fees of this proposed marijuana ordinance. Where does the city of Albion and the citizens of Albion benefit? I see more time, energy, and effort going against the staff. The lawyer, the planning, the code, APS, as I stated before. And we haven't received any projections on the aggregate amount of money. I think I heard $15,000 at one time could be added to our general fund. But my point is, how are we benefiting from this financially into our general fund? I still want to go on record and dispute, a friendly dispute with the city attorney's assessment that these facilities would bring in more money than dispensaries. I totally disagree with that. So, is there any projections of how much money and a ratio that we will receive just by having these facilities against our labor and manpower that we're gonna have to put in to see that these licensings come? How much money are we gonna benefit from this?
Would you like me to?
Yeah, it's probably a question, yeah.
Unfortunately, that's a great unknown. It's going to depend on the number of licenses that are issued in the state, and then it's divided by the number of licenses per municipality, so we don't know those numbers until we know those numbers. But based on the way the law and regulations are written currently, we do get a proportion based on the revenue sharing from those excise fees based on the licensing. It's my understanding that the City of Marshall has already hired an additional staff person to help with the administration associated with the licensing and processing. So I would not be surprised if we are also going to be facing a need to address the administration of all of these licenses by increasing staffing levels. Another consideration that we're going to have to look at closely is if we're going to have a dedicated officer on each of the shifts relative to the law enforcement aspects of the facilities. But some of these we don't know yet. We can make our best estimate, and we'll be moving forward with those as well as our administrative processes. But to answer your question, Councilmember Barnes, we don't have an exact figure. There will be some benefit, but key for us to consider as a municipality is that the costs don't overweigh those benefits.
Attorney Harkness.
So, I guess what I would say for Councilman Barnes is what the state has put in place is a far more and highly regulated, organized system than what's been in place before. And it's because of that the income generated by these businesses, including dispensaries, is totally different from the current model that's in place. For example, the city of Lansing. In the city of Lansing, before this statute came out, you'd be absolutely right. Dispensaries by far generate the most amount of income. Why is that? Not because there's just that many medical marijuana patients. It's because that's the source of marijuana, and unfortunately, what's happening is a lot of individuals that have legitimate licenses max out their amount and then turn around and conduct illegal sales to non-medical marijuana patients, and that's why under the current system, they generate far more income than the other businesses. But what's going to happen is now that it's all regulated by the state, that's not going to happen like that anymore, because it's a seed to sale tracking system. So I would agree that that is probably how things have been operating, and they at least until the new statute came into play, they were the primary source of income. But I think to curtail those illegal sales that were going on, that's no longer going to be the dynamic. Just my 2 cents.
Councilmember Barnes.
And just for discussion, because that's what this is, a study session for us to discuss it. We're still moving into an unknown area. We have no tangible numbers to compare anything with. We do not know if this will be profitable for the city of Albion, or we would go into a debt by hiring, by having these 4 different entities, the planning, you yourself, the lawyer, the Albion Public Safety, and our code enforcement officer following up on this ordinance. I just want us to be profitable in this. I don't want us to be, be experiment. So I'm just adamant that I'm hoping that we get some numbers. We've been under a moratorium for 3 years, and the law changed on us. That's why we're here today.
So we can come back to the license fees. The last thing that I need to know, number of facilities. As I said, Class A is 500 plants, Class B, 1,000, Class C, 1,500. My suggestion would be to put a limit on these facilities. I think, Councilman French made a point that to a certain extent they're limited by geography. But what I would suggest to council, and although we haven't done dispensaries, the city of Lansing had a huge problem with medical marijuana facilities in that they didn't have a cap. And now that this new statute is in place, at one point they actually had 70 dispensaries operating just in the city of Lansing. And now with the new statute, and again, I'm just using dispensaries as an example, now under the new law, they've actually limited it to 25. And obviously Lansing is a far larger city than Albion.
The one question I do have about that is, so if we limit and we're not doing automatic license renewals, and let's say someone with the capital comes in and says, okay, I want to do this. Well, obviously they'd have to find a location, but is it a self-fulfilling kind of thing? Because if I have there's only so many parcels of land, there are entities on those parcels of land, the license comes up, someone says, I want a license, but they have no,
So, if I understand what you're saying, so let me just give you for example, so you have let's say you can have two Class C grow operations,
yeah,
and a third comes to town and wants to open one, but it's capped out. So I guess in a hypothetical world, you could say, well, business number one, we're not gonna renew your license because of X, Y, and Z reasons, and now we're gonna go and give that license to this new individual coming in. Now, I could say hypothetically you could do that, but there had better be a very legitimate reason why that other business's license is not being renewed. If they were delinquent in taxes, or they hadn't been maintaining their facility in compliance with state statute or city ordinance, I don't think we could arbitrarily say, we're just not gonna renew your license. We'd probably get sued for, something like that. But hypothetically, you could, if there was a legitimate reason not to renew the license, then.
well, so let's say we set it at 2, and there was, I guess, an appropriate site for, I don't know, Class C license, and someone says, okay, I have the money to do it, I have the site, but you only have 2.
You can always come back and amend it and say,
Okay.
hey, we're gonna up it to 3 because we have this other site and we have another business wanting to come in. I mean, you can always change it. I'm not really comfortable with just saying unlimited.
Then the other question I have is, so because there's different classes, there's different classes within, let's say, grower, are there different, I can't remember, are there different classes within,
The other businesses?
yeah,
No.
okay. So we could say, we want 3 of each class of grower, and then we could say, 3 of the other ones.
You could say that.
Okay.
Mayor, if I could ask a question.
Yes.
Colin, is there an option to just say the total number of facilities and then allowing the applicant to determine which size? Because I'm anticipating that most of them are going to want probably the Class C license, and if we place a limit on the number of Cs, we may not be able to allow for the A and B.
So you're saying just say it will,
We'll give
Yeah.
10 licenses and.
Whoever comes.
of any grow facility?
Yes.
Yeah, we can word it however we want.
And then my other question and comment for the mayor and council, in the interest of time, because Cullen didn't like me to suggest unlimited, would be to suggest a number perhaps for you to consider of growing facilities as 20 for processors, since they can be stacked, and then 10 and 10 for the secure transporters and safety compliance facilities, just as a number to start looking at.
20,
That's
20,
a lot.
20.
I don't think we can even accommodate that many
Yeah.
based on our geography. But what we're finding in other communities is they have to come back and either amend their ordinances, or they're turning away licensed applicants, which has been benefiting us, quite frankly,
so you-
because they have set the margins too low.
So you're saying 10 for the processing, the lab, and the transport, and then 20?
Well, it's actually 20, 20, 10, 10 was what I suggested.
So,
Okay.
I guess here's what I would suggest to council, given that we're into our regular meeting
Yeah.
time. I think I have, enough to at least put most of this together. I will sit down with the manager and come to council at the next meeting with some numbers for the facilities. And then I think we just put the complete ordinance at maybe as a discussion item, and then we can do a vote,
Okay.
assuming you're comfortable with those numbers, or if we need to change them before the second meeting in January.
Okay. Thank you.
Anytime.
Okay, are there any public comments on the work session topic from the public? Okay, seeing none, I'd ask for motion to adjourn the work session.
So moved.
Study session.
Second.
Moved and second, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Thank you.